What is up, guys? It is the Bluebloods coming back at you with another episode today. It continues our Big 10 in 31 days segment. We're finally at Minnesota. This is one of the ones I have been looking forward to from some time. And we are joined by Justin Gaard, who is the sideline reporter for Minnesota football and KFAN radio producer and broadcaster. So I just want to say I appreciate you joining me today.
I appreciate you having me, Zach. Thanks. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely, man. But, I feel like we have to start with last season. I mean, it was a COVID riddled year, a lot of uncertainty. The Golden Gophers finished 3-4, but there were some close games there that could have went either way. Did this season fall short of, exceed, or meet your preseason expectations?
Um, I don't know if I really had any expectations just because everything was so weird. COVID was strange. No fans were strange. Opt-outs were strange. Injuries were strange. Um, I would say in a couple of fronts, I'd say the offense met the expectations. I'd say the defense probably fell short of the expectations, but they were also replacing so many guys from a year ago. It was just a weird year, I'm sure other guests have told you that as well. Wins didn't really feel like wins because nobody was there. Losses really didn't feel like losses. Obviously, you would have liked to have played better against Iowa. You would have liked to have beaten Wisconsin in the last game of the year. It was right there for the taking, I thought. But I'd say it was about what I expected. I thought the offense would be pretty good, which it was. I thought the defense would take a step back from 2019, which it did. And now we're kind of looking forward to 2021, and hopefully everything is more closer to normal than it was.
Right. It's looking like it. I know a lot of teams are expecting full fans. We'll see if that works out or not. But August 11th, you bring up the decision by Kevin Warren, Big 10 commissioner, postpone the season until spring. It was less than a week after he releases an all-conference schedule. We have some hope. Knocks that out real quickly. He received a lot of criticism for this decision. Was Minnesota one of the schools that was behind the scenes fighting? I know Nebraska was very public with their fighting. And what was your initial reaction to Warren's decision?
I was surprised because it seemed really abrupt, and I know the reasons why they did it. They were very concerned, like a lot of conferences were, with the myocarditis part of COVID, and they got spooked by that for sure, which for good reason. That's a scary thing when you start talking about the heart. To answer your question, Minnesota, I don't think did much behind the scenes at all. PJ, and I know we'll talk a lot about PJ, his mantra is basically, we get the information, we process it, and we move on accordingly. We don't spend time worrying about it. We don't spend time complaining about it. I said this a lot last fall because I got this question a lot. Like, what did PJ think? I don't think PJ had an opinion. It was, if they tell us to play, we're going to play. If they tell us we're not going to play, we're not going to play. But whatever it is, we're going to make the best of that situation. So they were obviously excited to play and happy to play. Everybody wanted to play. But I do know that a lot of the players, and I even heard from parents, when they started to go back, were worried about, do they have everything figured out? Are they going to keep us safe? How's the testing going to look? So they were not loud about it. And Mark Coyle's not a loud AD. PJ's loud, obviously, and energetic, but he's not one to complain or go against authority or anything like that. It was, if we play, we're going to do the best that we can. We're going to put our best foot forward. If we don't, we'll do whatever we need to do there, whether it's recruiting or practice or whatever, we'll do it and we'll just move forward. So they certainly weren't like, Ohio State and Nebraska and even Iowa to some degree. They were very much just, we'll do whatever we're told to do and try to make the best of it.
Right. I mean, yeah, that's kind of the thing I've seen. I mean, Nebraska and everyone was real vocal. I mean, there was rumors about them leaving the Big 10, which probably was a step further than what actually was ever going to happen. And then there were some other schools where I know I forget the school, but their AD is one of the medical heads for the Big 10, so they couldn't come out and fight against the decision. But
Yeah.
More on the field stuff. That's what our listeners love to hear. I love Tanner Morgan as a quarterback. He exploded onto the scene. You see the jerseys in the background. I still have nightmares about him and Tyler Johnson tearing up my Auburn Tigers. But he set multiple school records in 2019, but he received a lot of criticism this year for some inconsistencies that we saw. What are your thoughts on Tanner Morgan as a quarterback, and what are your expectations moving forward?
Like, he's the best quarterback the Gophers have had in probably 2 decades. Maybe Adam Weber is another guy who 10, 15 years ago played here, set all the records. Tanner's going to break most of those because he's going to, Weber was basically a 4-year starter. Tanner's great. Is he the flashiest quarterback? Is he the biggest quarterback? Is he the fastest quarterback? No, but he's smart. He's accurate. And even when he got to play a couple of years ago, Zach, when the original starter got hurt, they basically just handed the ball off to all their running backs and played really good defense. But even then, like, I went back and watched some games during the pandemic, because why wouldn't we? There's nothing to do
Right.
From his redshirt freshman year. And you could see his accuracy there, and you could see that there was something to build off of there. So he's a tremendous leader. The guys rally behind him. He was obviously spectacular 2 years ago, second team All Big Ten. I think what hurt Tanner last year was a couple of things. First of all, Tyler Johnson, is in the NFL. Rashad Bateman is there for a little while, and then he opts back out towards the end once the Gophers had their COVID pause. 2 offensive linemen that were supposed to start, one opted out because of COVID, another got hurt and missed the entire season. New offensive coordinator, which I don't think they were always on the same page. The system was a little bit different than what Tanner had gotten used to. He completely understood what the old system was. Under Kirk Shiraka, who went to Penn State. He knew that thing front and back. He was in tandem with Kirk every step of the way. So I just think last year there were some growing pains there, that they weren't quite on the same page all the time. And he was dealing with all those things, that I mentioned. He was not the same guy. I expect him to bounce back, for all the stuff that PJ says about resiliency and rowing the boat and bouncing back and moving forward. Everybody calls Tanner Mini PJ, because that's literally how he lives his life. I mean, he is like a PJ Fleck robot, regurgitating everything that PJ has said. So I'm a big Tanner fan. Just his story in general about how he got here, committing the same day that PJ got the job. He was supposed to go to Western Michigan, and PJ got the job here and called him and said, "We'd like you to come." And he just came, never saw the place. He was a day away from having a graduation party where all the cookies were W's for Western Michigan. They just flipped them over and made them M's. And he just came. Like, he is all in. And he's had a great career. I mean, people, talk about, the defense a few years ago, which was tremendous. There's 4 or 5 guys in the NFL off that. But what that offense did, I've never seen in Minnesota, with the way they started throwing the ball in. And you saw it firsthand in that Outback Bowl. That was a perfect Gopher football game that day in Tampa, with how they ran the ball well, but also Tanner just, finding one of those 2 guys, whether it was Bateman or Tyler Johnson, who had a huge day.
Yeah, you guys are responsible for probably the most critical episode I've ever had about Auburn football on here. I was pissed off. I was very upset that day. But, I wanted, the NFL draft's coming up. You mentioned Tyler Johnson, a Super Bowl champion now. He made a huge catch in the NFC Championship game to keep the Brady and the Bucs going. What does Rashad Bateman bring to the NFL? And in terms of the wide receiver rankings, there's a lot of debate this year about where these wide receivers rank. Where do you think Bateman should go, and what will he bring to an NFL team?
Well, he can do pretty much anything. That's the cool thing about Rashad. And what I think made those 2 difficult, Tyler and Rashad, is they were interchangeable. They could play the slot. They could go outside. I mean, the touchdown, the deep touchdown that Tyler caught against Auburn, Rashad's caught that same route, a number of times as well. So he's fast. He's quick. He catches everything that's close to him. I'm assuming, he's been working out. He's going to be stronger. He came in and played right away as a true freshman out of Georgia. And so, obviously size is going to be the biggest, detriment there. But he's terrific. I mean, he's like I said, I mean, he's got everything you would want in an NFL wide receiver. I know this year, like last year's a really good NFL wide receiver draft. I mean, Tyler's a 5th round pick a year ago, and he's, he's making huge plays for Tom Brady. Obviously, he's not a featured guy because of what they have there in Tampa, but the fact that Tom Brady is trusting a 5th round rookie in major situations, I think speaks to the depth of the wide receiver draft. And they say that this one might even be a little bit deeper. So I would expect, Rashad's going to test well. I think he ran a 4.37 40 here within the last couple of weeks. That was something that people wanted to see. I would say, I don't know. He's probably second, third, fourth, depending on who you ask, maybe first, depending on who you ask in terms of wide receivers. So he's going to be a 1st or 2nd round pick. And that he's a guy who I remember when he signed with the Gophers, every signing day, coaches tell you it's the greatest class ever, right? And they tell you who they like and who they don't like. And I just remember PJ saying, like, this is the guy. This is the guy from this class. And he was absolutely right. He was spectacular.
Right. I mean, and Rashad Bateman's a talent that usually would probably be a top two. This is a weird class with two Bolitnikoff winners in it and a
Yeah.
Heisman winner. So it's just a really tough class to come out in. But
Yeah, I
like you,
forgot about the Alabama guys, right? I mean, you've got one
yeah,
who gets hurt that's probably going to be a first round pick, and then you've got the Heisman winner. You're 100% right. So Rashad's right there in that mix with those guys. You know, I would
hmm
say, you know, maybe a notch below, but he's going to be one heck of an NFL player.
he absolutely is. And you mentioned earlier we got to talk about PJ Fleck. Just personally, I've been the biggest PJ Fleck fan. We had a fantasy draft of coaches we would take, and I believe he was like taken in the second or third round. He was one of the first coaches after that Saban Dabo type round that we had.
Yeah.
He's made me a Minnesota believer. He's coming into his fifth season. I believe that fans and experts are expecting a Big-10 title run. You got Tanner Morgan coming back. You have a lot of talent. What makes him such a excellent culture builder? We've here the row the boat. We saw what he did at Western Michigan. We saw what he did here. And what makes him a perfect fit for Minnesota?
Well, what makes him a perfect fit here is that he's different. And Minnesota is not a traditional football power. It's not a traditional college town. So you have to be different to cut through here. This is it's a bigger city. Every professional sports franchise that you could want, you have. You've got NBA, you've got NHL, you've got WNBA, you've got Vikings, which is huge, obviously up here. You've got pro soccer. You have everything. So to cut through and really establish yourself, you have to be different. And that's what PJ is. His energy is his energy. Whatever you see on TV or radio or wherever people that are listening, see him. I get this question all the time. Is he really like that all the time? He is like that all the time, all the time, behind the scenes, behind closed doors, every day. The practices are energetic. He's, always yelling, always screaming. He's very positive. And that's what I think, and he gets everybody going the same way. They're all going in the same direction. You're either in or you're out. You can't be halfway. You can't half step. You can't just kind of skate by, how they do things. You have to be all in. I mentioned Tanner, he knows every single phrase that PJ's ever said. He uses them in his everyday language. Other players do that as well. And now all the guys that are here mostly are PJ Fleck guys. So they knew that going in. They were recruited by him in high school, or if they transferred, from another school, like they're all in, they all know. So that's what he's a fun guy to be around. It's a fun program to be around because it's super positive. It's super fun, but it's super organized too. I think it's very, well coached. I think people forget behind all the crap, if you want to use that, or all the extra stuff, that they're very, they don't commit very many penalties. They don't turn the ball over. They don't make many mistakes. Like, it is a well-oiled machine. So like, for all the flash and all that stuff, there's a lot of substance underneath it as well. And that's why they were able to have success.
Right. I mean, they have videos leak all the time of just his speeches to the team after and before games. And you don't even have to be a Minnesota fan and you're ready to run through a wall for the guy. And you're like, I've never met him. I don't even root for this team. What is
Yeah.
going on?
Yeah.
To have a coach like that's huge. And you're seeing it on the recruiting trail too. The 2021 cycle just wrapped up, back-to-back top 40 classes loaded with a bunch of talented guys. What were the biggest positional needs in your opinion, and who are you most excited to see suit up for the Golden Gophers?
Well, I'm always excited to see what receivers that they bring in, because that is PJ's bread and butter. He was an NFL wide receiver. He's got his wide receivers coach, Matt Simon, likes to develop guys, because they put Corey Davis into the NFL from Western Michigan. Obviously, they did great work with Tyler. Tyler was a good player when he first got here. He didn't really play much football in high school, so he was very raw in terms of a receiver and really developed. Rashad the same way. So I'm always looking, at that side of the ball. But truthfully, defensively is where we need to see some replenishment, because a lot of the guys, that you heard about 2 years ago, they were from the previous staff. They were all upperclassmen. They were replacing basically 7 players last year that started on that defense. So I know they got some great secondary guys. Steven Ortiz from Arizona is, I know, one that was really highly thought of. The people that follow recruiting more closely than me said that was a really good one. So I think, they have found here the last couple of years some defensive reinforcements. When they first got here, offense was what they needed to address. And those first couple of classes, that's where Tanner Morgan shows up. That's where Rashad Bateman shows up. That's where Mo Ibrahim shows up. Chris Ottman-Bell, that's where they show up. I know that the subsequent classes after that, because of everybody that was they're going to be leaving, was going to be defense. So we're waiting to see who that next group defensively is, because 2, 3, 4 years ago, that's where they put a lot of emphasis.
Right. And I mean, it has to help recruiting too, seeing Minnesota players be so successful in the NFL. I mean, we mentioned Tyler Johnson, but the biggest one has to be Antoine Winfield Jr., who was one of the main factors in shutting down like Tyreek Hill and stuff in the Super Bowl. We saw the viral video of him giving Tyreek the peace sign. I mean,
Yeah.
he's an exciting guy. But shifting to next year, I mean, we've seen all these players break out. Mo Abraham this year really broke out for me. He put on an absolute clinic this year running the ball. Who are your potential breakout players that could really shine next season?
Oh, man, it's a good question. That's a really good question. And here's the problem. I used to be able to go to practice, like
Oh, yeah.
even last year, like people are like, well, who looks good? I'm like, I don't know. I haven't seen anybody since Raymond James Stadium, January 1st, 2021. Right. Mo obviously, has had a great career. He was behind some running backs, Rodney Smith and Shannon Brooks, who were here for a long time. And last year he just took the ball and ran with it. A guy who played a little bit last year, who it's disappointing he got hurt. I think it was the Illinois game he got hurt, is Trey Potts, who's from Pennsylvania. He's a backup running back. And, Mo is a really smart runner. He's small. He fits perfectly behind these big offensive linemen. He reads everything beautifully. But he'll be the first to tell you he doesn't have breakaway speed. If you ever play Mario Kart, that's my generation, Zach. Mario Kart, you get the Mario and Luigi's are fast, and you get like the Bowsers who are just bruising and slow. That's Mo. Like he's not gonna outrun anybody, but he's gonna be physical. He's gonna get through the hole. He's gonna know the right hole. He's gonna be smart. He's gonna be patient. Trey Potts, I think, is a guy who's got everything as a running back, and he was a freshman a year ago. Ended up getting hurt his foot, missed the rest of the season. He was kind of that change up. He was really starting to develop well. Cam Wiley's another running back who got to play a lot because Trey got hurt. He was a little slower to go. But I think started to make some improvements towards the end of the season. Ended up scoring some touchdowns. They ran him on some wheel routes and stuff. But that's where I would look offensively, and truthfully, defensively, I'm interested in the guys that they brought in from the transfer portal. I don't remember their names off the top of my head, but I know they brought in a guy from Clemson. That's going to play a big role, and that's where they need more people. That's where they need more guys, is up front defensively. I think linebacker, they're okay. They've got some younger guys like Mariano Sori-Marin and some others that got to play a little bit last year. Secondary wise, I think they're okay. Coney Durr's coming back. He's been here for a long time. I think he'll be an NFL player when it's all said and done. But, defensively up front, they had to play a lot of young guys last year. I think that's why you saw them go into the portal a little bit to get some reinforcements there. So I'm looking forward to see how those groups mesh, because they need more numbers. They have some good talent there. D'Angelo Carter's a name that comes to mind, who played a lot last year. I expect a big jump from him, and they went out to the portal and got more guys.
Yeah, the defensive tackle for Clemson was huge. He was supposed to be a big factor for Clemson, but then, they brought in like a 6'6" mountain of Brian Barisi that ended up taking out that spot. But I'm looking at the schedule, man. I'm just gonna apologize ahead of time. It is brutal. I mean, to open up with Ohio State, to still have road games against Colorado, Northwestern, Iowa, Indiana, who have all been good recently. This schedule is not going to be easy to make a run next year, but Minnesota's talented enough to do it. What do you think, way too early prediction here, what do you think the ceiling and or floor could be for this 2021 team?
Yeah, when I look at the West, I mean, I think the way that the West shakes out historically and right now, and it'd be foolish to sleep on Northwestern again, because they've done it now 2 out of the last 3 years. People forget about them, but they're right there. But the reason they forget about them is because Wisconsin's there, and obviously Iowa's there. Iowa's had a really good 5-year run again, maybe even 6-year run. After they did a little dip under Ferentz for a minute, they're right back, and you mentioned the recruiting piece earlier, Zach. The Gophers have recruited better than they ever have. So is almost everybody in the West. I think that's the story from the last handful of years. And that's why PJ, I think, was necessary to hire, because Wisconsin's recruiting hasn't slowed down. Iowa's recruiting hasn't slowed down. There's been, so much momentum in the West. And I remember vividly, PJ 2 years ago in Chicago, Big Ten Media Day, the last year that we had one. people were asking him about realignment and are they going to mess some things up? Because everybody thinks Big Ten, they think the East, right? They think Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan State, with good reason. And PJ said, I get why people are talking about it, but I think the West has got some things going here. And that very season, 3 teams in the West, Wisconsin, Iowa, and Minnesota, all finished in the top 15. So the West has gotten a lot better. So the floor and the ceiling, I think everybody's just kind of in that mix. I would put Wisconsin, Iowa, and you have to, because you got to respect them, Northwestern, in that first. They're probably the favorites. I'm guessing people are going to pick Wisconsin this year, if I had to guess, to win the West. Minnesota is right there, a little bit below them, probably in preseason. But I know they're excited about this year. I know this coaching staff has looked at 2021 when they got, their full recruiting classes and everything, and guys grew up in the program. They're really looking forward to it. But you're right, the schedule. I mean, right out of the gate, you got the Buckeyes, right? And that's Justin Fields not there anymore, but I'm guessing they have a guy. I'm guessing they've got some people. But that's the fun part. That's the fun part about it is, there's so many good games on the schedule. And there's so many ways to test your team and test your program and see if you're up for it. And a lot of that starts in the division, obviously, with Wisconsin, Iowa, and Northwestern. But, to have the crossover over Ohio State, hopefully TCF Bank Stadium is full. Hopefully everybody can go. Because that was the one thing, truthfully, that was the biggest buzzkill about last year was there was so much momentum off of 2 years ago. And the first sellouts in a while, College game day, New Year's Day bowl victory, like all those pieces coming back. Fans were into it like they've never been in my time covering the team. The city was into it like they've never been in my time covering the team. So to have that kind of stop because of the pandemic is unfortunate. And now they've got to build it back up. But the Ohio State one to start off the season is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is. And if it's full, it'll be interesting. CJ Stroud is very talented, but he's a young kid, and we've seen crazier stuff happen on the road and a first start for a freshman like that. So I'm interested for that game, but I want to shift back to the 2019 season. We've been kind of mentioning it a lot. A top 10 team in Minnesota. They made a real run at being a Big Ten college football playoff contender. What was different about that team, just in terms of covering it? What clicked and made this team kind of break through and be so successful?
Well, they were good on both sides of the ball. I mean, that's, we've mentioned the defense. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. There's Antoine Winfield, Kamal Martin, Carter Coughlin, Chris Williamson. Just those guys right there were all in the NFL last year and playing significant roles, especially Antoine Winfield. Kamal Martin was hurt, but he was, tracking to be a starter for the Green Bay Packers. They just, they started slow. They needed some miracles to win in the non-conference. They went out to Fresno and won that game in overtime. They converted a 4th and 13 to tie the game late. Chris Ottman-Bell made an unbelievable catch off an unbelievable Tanner Morgan throw. Antoine Winfield Jr. got an interception in overtime that kind of sealed it. So that was out there in the middle of the night, basically. They got that one. And also they needed a 3rd and 30 to convert down in the final 2 minutes to beat Georgia Southern at home. And they got it, and they ended up winning. Tyler Johnson caught it. But what changed was the Purdue game that year. They went on the road to Purdue. And there's been a little mini rivalry because they came in the first year and Jeff Brom started off really well at Purdue. He beat Ohio State that year. Yep. And everybody was like, wow, this is, Purdue's on the way. Now we've seen they were decimated with injuries. Obviously Rondale Moore got hurt a lot. That killed them. Yeah. But they went to Purdue and Tanner Morgan was incredible. And an offense that had basically just been trying to run the ball and not do much turned into this offense that we've never seen before with deep receiving threats and quick strikes and bombs. And it was incredible to watch. Tanner was 21-22 that day. And from that point on, Zach, that was the offense. It was running slants over the middle. It was read option. It was running the ball. And they just had everything going. And it was, PJ doesn't believe in momentum. He doesn't think it's a thing. Which I've always, joked with them about. I'm like, that makes no sense because it's they had momentum. I mean, they got Purdue and then they beat Nebraska and then they beat Illinois, and the offense is putting 40 to 50 points up and the defense is stopping everybody. And it all came to a head in that Penn State game, that was nationally televised, sold out crowd, maroon out, all of those things. And you saw, both sides made huge plays. Winfield had a couple of picks. Tyler Johnson had a touchdown. Bateman scored right away. It just, everything clicked. Everything was moving. It was what I noticed. And we're a real town that's really slow to pick up on when something's happening, because there's a lot of things going on here. Like, it's just
Right.
not all college football all the time. And I remember about middle of October, I was like, this is different. Like, the way these guys play, how happy they are for each other. Like, when someone scored a touchdown, like, everybody was out on the field. It didn't matter who. Like, they were that cliched collective group that just wanted to win and just, loved playing with each other. And it was a perfect culture team. It obviously didn't end exactly how they wanted. They had Wisconsin at home with a Rose Bowl trip on the line. College game day there, everything. They get out to a 7-0 lead, and Wisconsin, just beat them that day. I mean, Wisconsin reminded people who the bullies of the West were that day. But it was just, the offense was something, like I said before, we've never seen before. And their defense, had some great upperclassmen, some guys that grew up here, that always grew up having those moments for Minnesota. And basically almost everything clicked beautifully. And then it was capped off. I was thinking about that Outback Bowl. I was like, it's a nice reward. They've never been, they've been to the Capital One Bowl, but, they kind of backed their way into that 5 or 6 years ago. They were 8-5, and they just kind of got picked there. You know how the bowl selection goes. Felt like they earned the Outback Bowl. So I felt like, hey, it's good reward, not the Rose Bowl, but people are going to go to Florida. We're going to have a good time. Auburn's really good. We'll see what happens. And everybody that went down there had the complete opposite mindset that I did. The fans that went down there, was 20,000 of them. They're like, no, we're here to win, dude. And the Gophers obviously were too, because they played great. And that's, one of the best days they've had. So it was just, it was a great ride. It was a lot of fun. What I always remember is the crowds, the sellout against Penn State, the sellout against Wisconsin. And then what happened, New Year's Eve in Tampa, and then subsequently at Raymond James Stadium. Just how much the people got into it and got behind it is something I'll never, ever forget.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I want to go to next. I want to shift to the environment of Minneapolis, my most hated city. I hate this place. I was there for the Final Four with Auburn. I just can't. I can't get over Minnesota beating us and then having to go to this city. It's cold, and to have what happened happen. So I'm not a huge fan of Minneapolis, to be completely honest with you. But I want to get to a game. I haven't been to a TCF Bank Stadium game. What makes this stadium so unique on game days? You mentioned the Penn State game. I remember watching that game on TV being like, that looks like a game I want to be at. That looks like a national top 25 environment that I need to go to. What changed, and what makes this place so special?
Well, we're a front-running town, and college coaches have a tough time with that. We're not a very positive fan base. We've been talking about this with, the basketball jobs, now open. Richard Pitino's going over to New Mexico. And so there's always a lot of discussion about, like, I go all around the Big-10, obviously, with the team. So I see the traditions and the fan bases, and I read the coverage from other towns. And it's not a traditional college environment. So it's very difficult to gain any traction. And because there hasn't been a lot of championship success, no one ever really wants to believe it, that what they're seeing is real. So it really takes a lot, but once we get in and we get our hooks in, like, we go crazy. You saw that in the Penn State game. And what I always remember about that, the Gophers had a bye week leading into that, which helped them because they needed, not that your listeners care, but attendance has been an issue here for a long time. And they've got the new stadium, which is great, but the ticket prices have been a thing forever. Personal seat licenses, people didn't understand those here, and I'm trying to tell people, like, they're happening all over the place. That's the reality of college sports. Like, but we don't think that way as a city. Like, it hadn't been in our psyche. So when things change, people go, whoa, what's this? And we're raising prices now. And anyway, so they had some work to do to sell the tickets. And so luckily they had a week off to kind of get that done. And I'll never forget walking in from the pregame show, and every seat was filled before the game. And everybody was wearing maroon, and they had their gold hats because it was like a maroon and gold out type thing. And I was just like, okay, like, this is real. Like, even 2 weeks before, I think they played Maryland, and they're undefeated at this point, and they're playing great, and the attendance is low. I mean, it's just, there's not a lot of people that had bought in at that point. But they bought in for that Penn State game, and it was as cool of an environment that I've ever been in, and I've been in all of them in the Big-10. It was up to par with every single one that you would want to mention. And that's what PJ's dreams are for every Saturday around here, and that's what it should be in a college, that's what college football is. It's about the the camaraderie and the traditions and the people and the fans. That's what makes it special. Here, it's just we're such a different city, and college coaches come in here, and I think it shocks them at first. Like, what do you mean? I'm 6-0. Why isn't everything going great? It's like, because we're a battered people, man. We're a bruised. Because we've had heartbreaks with the Vikings, we've had heartbreaks with the Timberwolves, we've had heartbreaks with the Wild. We had the Minnesota North Stars leave us to go to Dallas. Like, PJ always talks about that. He says we got to stop thinking like that. We got to think forward. And I always say, with all due respect, PJ, you've been here 5 years. Some of us have been here forever. Like, we got a lot of scars that we're trying to, so. But I appreciate that about him, is that he is trying to change the mindset of people, and he did that year. I mean, he got people to believe in it, and they showed up. They showed out. College game day, if people remember, it was cold. I mean, it's Thanksgiving week basically here. It's snowing. It's sleeting. It's not fun. It's not. We say people Minnesotans say we like the cold. I don't. I'm born and bred here. I hate it too. There's snow on the ground right now. It's the middle of March. It's brutal. And the game day crowd was incredible. That game, obviously, in the snow against Wisconsin was sold out. Like, the people showed out for it. It's just we're very slow to buy in and believe. But once we do, like, you got us. You can hook us in, and that's what PJ did 2 years ago. That's what those Gophers did 2 years ago. And hopefully, even with this last gap year where nobody could go, hopefully they build upon that this year.
I'm sure they will. And I think it's going to go one of two ways. Either people are going to be real scared to go because of COVID, they're worried, or those fans are going to be like, listen, I had a year off. I want to go to a game, so we're going to sell everything out. But last question here before I let you go, man. You've been covering the Golden Gophers, this area, for a while now. You've seen some incredible teams, games, moments. What has been your favorite, most memorable moment since you've been at Minnesota?
Yeah, there's a few. Obviously, the Penn State game was unbelievable. The interception at the end, beating a top 5 team, just that was incredible. I mentioned the fans. I mean, that to me was the story of 2 years ago. The people were incredible, how they got behind the team. But there's been a lot of good moments. There's been, I think about, the Citrus Bowl year that I talked about. They, beating Iowa handily. That's a big one around here. And beating Nebraska in, Jerry Kill's, 2013, 2014. That was kind of a proving ground of like, okay, Coach Kill's turning things around a little bit. They manhandled Nebraska here and then went down in Lincoln where they hadn't won in 60 years or whatever it was. And just remembering that day was special. That whole 2015 year, I think it was 2014, 2015 was special. And, being at Camp Randall 3 years ago now, I guess it was, when they beat Wisconsin for the first time since 2003, just watch, because there had been, for people that weren't familiar, even they hadn't beaten Wisconsin literally since 2003. It's their biggest rival. Paul Bunyan's Axe, there are teenagers in Wisconsin that didn't know life without it, right? Like, it was like this big thing. And they had a couple of close, they had 2 games in Wisconsin in the last decade where they led at halftime. One of them was to go to Indianapolis, actually, that Citrus Bowl year, and they were up at halftime when Wisconsin came back and beat them. It was just always something that Wisconsin was doing. The quarterback that, hadn't played well all year, all of a sudden would throw 3 touchdowns to a tight end that we'd never heard of, right? It was just, every team's got one of those rivals, right? Where just stupid stuff happens. And so to wrap up 2018, they're 5-6. Most people think, okay, it's the Wisconsin game. Here it comes. It's the annual loss to the Badgers, and we just kind of go on our way. And not only did they beat Wisconsin, they beat them on the road for the first time since 1994, and they dominate them. I mean, they run back a punt right at the end of the first half to go up 17-3. And I'll be honest, and I've talked about it a lot, I'm still thinking at halftime, well, I've been here before. Gophers have been in this situation before, and that goes back to what I was saying before. Like, PJ, stop thinking like that. And not only did they, they played better in the second half and went on a 15-play drive to basically ice the thing. They ended up missing the field goal, but it didn't matter because they took 9 minutes off or whatever. So to have Camp Randall basically empty, except for just the Gopher fans that, for whatever the reason, made the trip, because this isn't a great Gopher team we're talking about. It's a 5-6 team going to Wisconsin where they haven't won in 20-plus years. Like, you're probably just going there because you bought tickets and you want to go. Like, you have no expectation probably that you're winning the game, but to be there with those people, the 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people, whatever it was, to get the Axe back for the first time and just going back to campus and having people show up at midnight on campus, it unbelievable. So that's one of them. Beating Michigan in 2013. Jerry Kill was another one for a number of different reasons. There's been a lot of cool ones that I've been lucky enough to just be on the field for and be kind of behind the scenes for. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and it's on the upswing, man. I'm excited to see where Minnesota goes from here. As long as PJ Fleck's there, I think Minnesota is going to be on the upswing, and they're going to be Big Ten contenders. And until he goes elsewhere or something like that. But man, I appreciate you joining me. This was a blast. Minnesota was one of the programs when we started this theme that I was like, we got to get someone on for Minnesota. This is one that I have to talk about. So, where can our fans find you? Radio shows, anything like that? What do you want to plug to our listeners?
I mean, if you want to follow me, it's at JGKFAN. Very easy. It's my initials and it's my where I work, KFAN Radio. So I do an afternoon drive show here in the Twin Cities from 3 to 6:30. KFAN.com is where. But yeah, JGKFAN. Do Gopher podcast, do college football podcast, kind of like you do, Zach, and yeah. All kinds of stuff, really, all kinds of stuff. But if you're in a Big Ten school and you see me on the field, say hi, because the fans are the best part of this whole thing.
Absolutely. Hopefully we'll get some in there. Hopefully I can make it up to Minnesota for a game. I just want to get to as many stadiums this year as possible. I hated taking off last year, not getting to go to any after. I had a streak of like Auburn games from like 2014 or something like that I had to break last year because I couldn't get to a game. But I appreciate it, man. I definitely looking forward to have you back on. If I make it up to Minnesota, I'll definitely be reaching out.
Anytime, and please do. Thanks for having me, Zach. I had a good time.
Absolutely, man. But guys, that is a wrap on this episode. We'll be back next week with some more Big 10 and 31 days episodes. Y'all know the 2-minute drill Monday through Fridays on our YouTube channel as well. But for myself, for Justin, and for the Blue Bloods, we are out.